Wicked cool. Feature alert.
Hey there, podcast fans. Thanks for listening. Now, you can also reach out and send me a text message. On every episode, at the top of the show notes, you'll see a link that says, send us a text message. Simply click it, write something super nice and sweet, and away we go. Also remember to please subscribe, share this podcast with a friend by telling them about it, and leave us a positive review, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, your favorite podcast streaming service, or even on our website at www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com.
Oh, is this that pirate man thing you were going on about in class?
Sailor Man.
I don't believe in ghost stories.
He's not a ghost. The Sailor Man is real. He doesn't take kindly to visitors stopping on his door.
Monster!
I am what I am.
Tonight, horror has new forearms. We discuss Popeye the Slayer Man with its really creepy but cool filmmakers, including our own Cuyle Carvin, who, by the way, will be starring, I say starring because he's in every single episode of the Netflix series Zero Gravity. Stay tuned. This will be a great one.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
Well, I have probably one of my most ambitious podcasts, but one of the most fun ones I'll be doing. I am here with not one, not two, but four guests. I'm here with old pal Cuyle Carvin, who is my sometimes co-host and often an actor and sometimes a power seller on eBay. Cuyle just recently made a really cool, kind of provocative movie with some filmmakers that he has made several films with, and we're going to have them on here to talk about it. And the gist is kind of this. Everyone has a dark side, but this one really throws you for a loop. So that's the tease, but I'll first start by introducing Cuyle, and then Cuyle, if you can introduce the producers and filmmakers that are on the call with us.
Yay. Happy to be here again. And you said sometimes power seller on eBay, but I'm a full-time power seller on eBay.
Sorry.
I just want to say that. So me and my pals, we've made a bunch of movies together. So Robert Ryan was the director. So the film's Popeye the Slayer Man, and Robert is the director. He's also very tall, which goes hand in hand with being a good director. And then we have Nathan Todaro and Alex Tucker. All four of us are also producers of the film. So that's our team. And Jeff Miller, who's producer as well. And he's into a lot of the business. He's an integral part of all the contracts and stuff. So he has a lot of insight on a lot of this process. So that's the team.
Cool. So let's go around the horn. We'll start with Robert first. And if you could just introduce yourself, you're the director of the film, and just your quick background would be great.
I'm Robert. I direct Popeye the Slayer Man. Me and Cuyle have been friends since like 2011, 2012. We started working on a web series together, and we've done a couple movies and web shorts on YouTube. You know, we met Jeff Miller, I guess it was like 7-8 years ago. and started working with him. And we did a movie that Kyle directed called Dolls. That ironically enough, just today we got a payment from Jeff for that movie, quarterly payment. So
good.
We're making money 8 years later, whatever it is. But then we've done a couple other projects. We were in Oneonta for the first time, or I was in the Oneonta for the first time in 2023. We shot a movie together, myself, Kyle, and Jeff, called Ouija Witch. When we came up with this idea for the Slayer Man, we talked to Nathan and Tucker, who were also on this podcast. We just thought, hey, we got this really fun idea. Let's try this. And, it just all came together. And here we are, like a year later, having finally finished it. We're literally just in the process of sending it to get QC'd and delivered to our distributor. A good time to really start talking about everything.
Yeah, you guys are already generating a lot of buzz. I mean, I was looking at it before this interview. We'll talk about that. But first, let's go to Alex. Alex, want to give us a quick introduction?
Yeah. Hey, Bob. Thanks for having us. Kyle and I met, gosh, what's it been now, Kyle? 18?
Oh, yeah.
Almost 20 years, somewhere around there. Back when I was casting my first movie that I ever produced, a short film on the East Coast, going on near 20 years now. So Kyle and I connected.
It's when you were a baby boy.
Yeah, I know. We were young Spitfires trying to make a name for ourselves in an industry we knew nothing about. And fast forward to now, many years of friendship and lots of projects together along the way. Kyle connected me to Robert and Jeff, and then later on Nathan. But I remember 2 years ago sitting in Robert's kitchen hearing about this idea for a Popeye movie, this idea that they had been bouncing around. And I was like, well, let's do it. I want to be a part of it. So started helping them in any way we could to get this off the ground, and then shot it last year and excited to bring it to the world.
Excellent. And I know there are two more people. One guy might be out playing pickleball or racquetball. That's Jeff that you guys talked about. But we still have, who is present, we have Nathan Todaro. So Nathan, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks for having us here. It's an honor to be on here. I know Kyle talked about this podcast before and it sounded like a lot of fun. So I'm glad to be here. Me and Kyle met back in 2016. Interestingly, I subleased his house while he was navigating over to Atlanta to pursue other film and TV endeavors. And we just became friends at that point. I've been in the film business most of my life, just doing indie films here and there, but we had never worked together on something yet. And I knew that he was part of this team here, that they've been making some films. So I was interested in being a part of them working future projects. And so I just kind of talked to him about it over the course of time. And guess it was last winter, and he approached me with this project, and I thought, man, that sounds. He just said, "Yeah, we're going to shoot a movie on Popeye. Are you interested?" I'm like, "I'm absolutely interested. Let's do it." There was no question. I mean, I was a fan of Popeye growing up, and it was like immediate yes on that. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to continue to work with these guys moving forward. If this does well enough, I'm hoping we can look at doing a sequel for this. It'd be amazing to be able to do.
I was half kidding, but when I said everyone has a dark side, a lot of characters are coming into the public domain. And what that means is when creative works enter the public domain, anyone can kind of enjoy, interact, use it without legal repercussion. Copyright durations vary. They could be like 70 years after the author dies or 95 years after publication. But a couple of years ago, 2022, Winnie the Pooh entered the public domain, and people may or may not be familiar. There was a film called Pooh, Blood and Honey. I think that was shot for about $200,000. It made about $7 million or whatever. So that started. You guys are in 2024. Mickey and Minnie Mouse entered the public domain for Steamboat Willie, that version of them. And in 2025, Popeye, and that's why you guys are here today. You've taken the Popeye story and given a different twist on it. And I want to ask you, start with you, Kyle, and maybe you can have everybody else jump in. There had to be somewhat of a race. I think there were 2 Popeye movies coming out. I don't know if the other one's Revenge of Popeye or whatnot, but there's a couple Popeye movies coming out. How did you guys get in front of the rush for the Popeye film, and how did the story circulate with you guys?
Yeah, so I think Jeff, who's one of the producers that may join, he likes this bar, Tiki No, up in North Hollywood. And that's where we have business meetings and talk concepts for future films. Me, Robert, and Jeff were there one night, and Jeff happens to be friends with the guys that did the Pooh movie. It has wild success. As you mentioned, it's just made boatloads of money. So we just were randomly looking, Google search or whatever for other public domain things that were coming up. And there's Popeye, like right at the top of the list. I'm like, we should talk about a Popeye film. Immediately, we were all interested. And I think there was a little back and forth over the next, I don't know, Robert, do you remember, like, it was like a year or so where we were going to do it. We were like all on board. Then we kind of like decided we weren't, and then we were. It's kind of back and forth a little bit. I don't know the conversation that really was like, no, we're doing it. But it was never a sure thing. But do you remember that?
Yeah, we were struggling for the story. That was the big thing, is what angle we wanted to go with it.
Yeah.
And that was where we were really trying to find something that would be kind of unique and interesting, but also something fun that was in our wheelhouse to do.
Yeah, and I think like we came up with monster versions, all sorts of different stories of variations before we and Jeff has a pulse on what seems to be distributors are looking for and what audiences are watching. So he came to the table with a bunch of ideas that we tried to work out, but it nothing like made our hearts sing for a while about what direction to go. We ended up coming up with this story, and John Doolin, he's an awesome writer. He's done a ton of horror film. And, we handed it off to him for the script. He wrote Ouija Witch for us as well.
What were some of the storylines that were left on the cutting room floor? Are there anything you guys could talk about? Or
Well, Tucker made a comment in the beginning about how he remembers we were all in the kitchen together. And we had so many ideas that we finally said, let's all just get together. So everyone came over to my place, and we're just standing around the kitchen, kicking around we had narrowed down like 3 or 4 ideas, and some of them were just a bit bigger, more broader in their story. Like, basically Popeye being more of a heroic figure fighting a bunch of evil villains. But the problem is with our budget, and we weren't sure how we were going to pull off the look of Popeye at this point yet. We were still kind of going back and forth, whether doing prosthetics or, how it was going to work. And we had done Ouija Witch the year before, and we had a witch character that we had a prosthetics on, full face prosthetics. And that process was like 3 to 3.5 hours every day that we had the witch on camera. And it just kills your time. And so we were struggling with, like, how do we have a lot of Popeye, but not have him where we're doing 3-4 hours of makeup every day, because it's going to be a struggle. That was a lot of the issues also, is just the logistics of how we can get it done. At this point, we didn't have any locations. We weren't even sure where we were going to shoot it. We were just trying to get the story. But I think at that kitchen, I think we narrowed it down to the story that we all kind of felt like, yeah, this might be it, which is the one that we have. And that was probably, I'm guessing late 2023, like the last quarter of 2023. And then at that point, we just kind of worked on the treatment and then gave it to John Doolin, who wrote the script.
Looking at the trailer, it's very visceral and bloody, kind of old 80s type of effects. Reminds me of like Terrifier meets Popeye, that type of kind of the clown with those intense effects. Do you guys mind talking about that a little bit, why you decided to go that way? Because I think that was the right way to go.
Well, I think, Terrifier definitely was, well, I should say, I think preface, we had been, what was this, like the fourth, I don't know, something like the fourth movie, and we've always wanted to go bloody. And then come the final project with some of our old films, it's like, it doesn't feel bloody enough for what we kind of initially set out to do. Not that we're like chasing, we're not trying to make gore films by any means, but it just always felt like our deaths were underwhelming. So we knew on Popeye, we wanted to go all out with the deaths. And, Terrifier, obviously very big in pop culture at the time. So I don't want to say it wasn't an influence, because we weren't going, for the gore being like the central aspect. Like, we really wanted a solid story. So I forget what the initial question was, but
yeah, I was asking Kyle about the the kind of almost practical horror effects. It's just kind of stepping on nails and having heads squeezed and stuff like that, where it's just kind of jarring. There is probably a little tongue-in-cheek undertone with this whole thing. I mean, one of the lines is, "You're a monster. I am what I am." Yeah. But there's some more so than I've seen in your other films, because I've seen Dolls and I've seen Ouija Witch. This more so has more of a creep factor and a violent edge to it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is an Afraid of Nothing Paranormal Podcast Alert.
10, $10 merch. $10 merch.
That's right, podcast fans. If you go to our website, afraidofnothingpodcast.com, and click on the store tab, you too can find now $10 merch on the website. So not only can you get the great stuff like the hoodies and the t-shirts and the blankets and the glasses, you can also get stickers and bumper stickers and, well, a whole lot more. You need to see it yourself. But just remember this.
$10 merch
is now available at the Afraid of Nothing podcast store. Check it out. And remember, never be afraid to look good.
Well, I'll jump in and say, yeah, one of the things that to Kyle's point about how we've done other kind of horror stuff, and we're always a little bit like, we felt like we were too safe. And so we said, hey, let's just have some fun with this. Let's go a little over the top and let's do practical kills, like you had mentioned, and we said the same thing, like, you know, kind of like something more similar to what we saw in the 80s, like the kind of a little, not quite campy, but definitely more over the top. And we had a great practical effects guy. His name was R.J. Young, who lives in upstate New York. I had talked to him, and I basically said, hey, you know, we've got X amount of kills. I want a gallon of blood for every single kill we do. I don't care how we get to that gallon of blood, but I want a gallon of blood for every kill. So I shipped him gallons of fake blood like a month or two before we started filming. So he had everything on hand. And I think we went through almost everything by the time we were done. So he was great at doing practical effects. He did tests and everything and sent me footage, and it looked great. And we had another makeup artist named Heather Sharp, who was amazing. And she stepped in and really, she was the makeup artist for the characters, but also stepped in to help with the blood effects and everything. And that's what helped. I think what sets it apart from some of the other horror films out there that rely too much on CG and After Effects and all that kind of stuff.
Question for Alex and I guess Nathan too. What was the process like having all you guys have input on the script, which I know could be very painful, and to get consensus, and then kind of seeing it and seeing the dailies and realizing this is looking pretty good? I mean, what was that like for each of you? Could take a shot, but what was that like for you to be involved in the process, and did it come out the way you thought it was going to come out?
Well, the funny thing is, Bob, is that Kyle was a part of the development of this whole thing, and then he took a vacation to work with Netflix for the entire production. So
I won't edit that out, but okay, yeah.
He likes he likes to say that he was very helpful, but we did all the legwork, and he's reaping the benefits now. So the truth is, we knew that we had something really special on hand when we got to the set. We worked with a really great production partner in upstate New York called Otsego Media, and we've worked with this team for a few movies now. Really great, really professional, high quality indie work, and they have a whole network of support in upstate New York, where Kyle is actually from, his hometown in Oneonta. And we keep going up there because we get great partnership with them, and we get really great high quality production level from this corner of the world that you wouldn't expect film work to be. So we keep going up there, and it ends up being great experiences every time we do. But what really stepped it up for us was the level of, not just the level of skill that went into this, but the locations. We were able to find, us and our partners were able to find really, really great locations that sets this apart. And in some ways it elevated this from what it could have been, which could have just been like the run-of-the-mill, down and dirty run and gun shooting, to making it a really, really high-quality, independent, low-budget feature. And the performances, the location, the kills, all of that was just elevated because everybody showed up ready once they saw the location and said, oh, this is pretty legit. This is going to happen now. And in some ways, it kind of amplified everybody's professional level that they brought to it.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. You guys are getting like a mini Mike Flanagan thing going on where you work with people you like on a number of films and you bring them back. Was most of it shot in New York and Oneonta?
Yeah, it was exclusively in, well, I would say 99% or 98% or whatever, very high 90%. We did shoot one night in Cooperstown. Did I miss anything else? Like, you know, I was only on set for whatever, 2 of the whatever days that we were there. But I think everything was in Oneonta and then a day in Cooperstown, right?
Just to clarify, he wasn't taking a vacation. Kyle was working on a Netflix show opposite Robert De Niro. I think that's coming out February 6th or what? Sorry,
February 20th. Yeah.
Oh, February 20th. Okay, sorry. On Netflix.
Of course, I joke about that. Kyle was bankrolling.
No kidding.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, what was your question, Kyle?
It was just all in Oneonta except for that one day in Cooperstown, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, we did one very small pickup shot here in Los Angeles just a couple of months ago because there's just one shot that we needed to replicate. But other than that, it was all in upstate New York. Yeah,
that's excellent. Just one pickup shot. I mean, that's amazing. That's really good, and that's really good filmmaking.
We spent 9 days in this main factory that we shot in, but we did have one more pickup day where Corey and the Otsego media team, they had to go back in there for a couple of hours and get a couple more pickup shots. Just again, it's one of those things where when you're shooting really fast and it's low budget, you hope you get everything you need. And then when you start editing, you realize, oh, when the person looks in that direction, we don't have the shot of what they're looking at. Like we just didn't get it because we were rushing. So let's go back in there and let's just get that POV shot. So we had a couple of those we had to get. And so they had to go in for like 2 or 3 hours and get everything. And which was kind of fun because I was here in LA and I was on FaceTime with them while they were there set up shooting. And I was basically looking at the shot and saying, yeah, let's do it. And then they would shoot it. And I'd say, okay, let's move on. And we had one pickup day there and then one brief, like 2-hour pickup shot here in Los Angeles.
What camera did you use and how many cameras did you use?
We had three cameras, but I think we primarily had just the main cam and then the B cam. I think C cam rarely made it. Obviously, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but we used Sony FX3 and FX. I think we used FX9, FX6, and the FX3, but I could be wrong.
That sounds right.
No, that's right. Yeah, they were all Sony FX.
And Nathan, what was it like for you? How did the from the script to onset to completion? What was the experience like for you compared to other films you've done? And where does this film rank?
Well, I'll tell you that it was interesting when originally Kyle just mentioned doing Popeye, and he just wanted to see if I'd be interested first, and I was like, yeah, of course, and he was like, all right, we'll go work out some details. I'll let you know as it moves forward. So it was kind of stopped at that in my creative mind because I've produced some things and written some screenplays as well, so I couldn't help but just start thinking of like what story that would be. And I came up, my thought was almost exact with what they ended up going with, and I didn't know about it. So they talk about Akashic records and stuff. I don't know if there was something there just kind of downloaded to me about the story itself. And so once he told me, I was like, dude, that's what I was thinking. That's brilliant. It was great. But yeah, getting on set there, pulling up to the factory and seeing this small town, like it was just the factory is perfect where we shot. I mean, it's just this ominous, it's a working factory. So there's I think it was grain is what they're doing there.
Yeah.
And so
feed everywhere.
Seed. Oh yeah. And so there's this dust in the air constantly, which, isn't great for our respiratory health, but nonetheless, it was perfect for what we were doing. So it was, it gave this, sense of this old factory that hadn't been touched. And it looked like nobody cleaned this place in a long time anyway, which is great for the aesthetics of the film. And then to see RJ do his work, because I was in the home base area a lot, coordinating with actors and getting them on set certain times. So I was there with RJ a lot, watching him prep the special effects that he was doing, and he was a master. And here's a guy essentially doing it by himself, and just how creative his mind was of figuring out, oh, okay, I got to get this skull to crush. And here he is just like building this thing. And then there's, something else that he would do. And I'm like, this guy's just a genius. And he'd show me pictures of other things that he was doing. And I was just really blown away. There's a few times, in life that you come across somebody that is just like a master at what they do. And here a guy just that he was blowing me away with what he was capable of. And then we go on set and we would make it happen. I remember there was a few times when there was a kill, and I was looking around at everybody, and everybody was just like smiling and with their mouths open watching this go on. And then it would cut and everybody would just start laughing of just how good and crazy it was. And we'd play it back like, oh man, that looks so good, man. We just knew that this is going to come together really special. Like just as a group, you could feel the energy on set.
Hey, quick question, quick clarification: is RJ is that Robert the director, or is that someone else? I'm just trying to. I'm sorry, I know less. I can get this out.
It's RJ Young. He's not me. He was a different guy, a great guy. He did all the special effects, all the blood effects and everything. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's critical. I made a film a long time ago, and I was shocked at how important the assistant director was. To keep everything rolling for the director. So.
Can you say that again, Bob?
Oh, really? Well, who is that? Who is that? Was that someone that? Yeah. I'll say it again.
That's me.
Yeah. I'll say it again. I was shocked. I made I'm not like you guys. I'm not a prolific filmmaker. I made 2 films. One Kyle was in a documentary. Before that was a drama, and I pretty much shot it on a 2-week vacation, with a crew that was very experienced in Boston. And I had a kind of a bare bones crew, but the assistant director was huge. I didn't realize how important that person was to keep us on track. And I'm sure you guys had somewhat of a skeleton crew too. So the crew is just as important as the cast in this thing, correct?
Oh yeah. And to second Tucker's comment, when we did a movie called Dolls, like 6-7 years ago, Kyle was the director of that, and I was the assistant director. That was my first experience, and I did not like it, because it was so difficult. It was such.
You have to work harder than the director. That's it's crazy.
You're sweating the entire time, and it's crazy. So when this movie, we started talking about it, we were at Tiki No Bar in North Hollywood, and Tucker was with us, and at this time, and we were putting it together, and we said, "Yeah, we need an assistant director," and Tucker was like, "Oh, I could do that," and we're like, "Done, sold. You got it. You're hired." Because we knew how difficult the job was, but we knew Tucker was the guy to do it. But we weren't, we were hoping he would volunteer for it because it's such a tough job, and it was. I mean, Tucker was probably one of the hardest working guys running around the set every day. So he did a great job.
Well, I appreciate that, but I love being able to support somebody like Robert, who is the visionary of this film, as the director, helping to not just give them all the tools, but take things off of their plate so they can do their job better, keeping things on schedule, supporting him with the team around him that he best needs. So,
and Tucker saved my ass many times where he would come up to me and say, "Hey, did you get that shot that you meant this?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, we didn't. Thank you, Tucker. Let's wait. We got to get a shot, guys." That was almost a daily occurrence because you easily get overwhelmed when you're moving so quickly. You're trying to get so many pages done in a day that if you don't have a good assistant director, it'll fall apart very quickly. But if you have someone good like Tucker, it's like I felt like I was in just a very warm embrace all day.
Oh, good.
I think people are turning off the episode listening to all this hand-holding here.
I know, really.
Like, what's going on?
I just got to tell you from experience. Yeah, the assistant director is the unsung hero, man. From my I mean, look, the whole crew's great too, but man, that was someone who was really important and really kept everything together, the glue. So, one other observation. I think kids across America are probably thanking you for this film because it gives them a reason not to eat their spinach, unlike the Popeye from the 1950s. The recall on spinach, and it causes this, this anomaly. So they're going to be thanking you for that.
Well, for every happy child that doesn't have to eat spinach, there's a lot of unhappy adults that are not thrilled with the idea of their childhood favorite cartoon being turned into a horror character. I read through a bunch of the comment sections because YouTube has a lot of prolific, YouTube horror reviews.
Oh, yeah.
So anytime any interview or any, certainly when a trailer pops out, it's like there's so many channels that start to review and kind of guess what the movie's about. And there's a lot of folks that don't seem too happy about Popeye being turned into a horror thing. But we're not talking about any spoilers here. But there's more than meets the eye with Popeye.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, Kyle. Yeah, what about the cast? Let's talk about the cast. And let's go through the whole group here. You guys work together. You got you're on the same page for the script and the story. How did you come about casting this?
Once we had the story and we started working on the script, we had the cast, the characters laid out. The first thing that we did is we said, hey, who have we worked with already that we really like that we could put in this movie? For example, Sean Conway, he was a character that we worked with the year prior in the movie Ouija Witch. he did a great job. He's a great guy, and he had like just moved out to LA a few months, like the year before, and so he was kind of hanging out with our group a little bit. So he was kind of, he was something that we saw regularly, and I always thought he'd be perfect for the role of Dexter. Another actress, Mabel Thomas, who plays the role of Katie in this movie. She played a very small role, just a one-day role on Ouija Witch, but she was so good and so professional, and was just such a team player that, for me, I thought, oh man, like I would work with this person again in a heartbeat. So that was one of those things we said, hey, is there something for her in this movie? So we went down the list of people that we worked with before that we like. That's always the first step, because it makes the job easier to say, can we just kind of offer the movie or offer the role to this person versus having to go through the whole casting process. But to Kyle's credit, he likes to do the casting and likes to go through the casting process. So we actually did a full casting session for each character, callbacks, even though we had a couple people that we thought might be great for, like we didn't know if Sean or Mabel would even be available for the movie. So we were just kind of like casting it. And surprisingly enough, both Sean and Mabel did submit to the breakdowns without us even telling about the movie. And so we put them through the casting process just so that we can tell our other producers like Nathan and Tucker and Jeff and everyone can kind of see like, hey, these are people that we like for a reason. And you could see they did a great job on the audition. So that was pretty much it. But we were very serious with the casting. We went through a long process, myself, Kyle, and Jeff. Like we were on Zoom calls constantly looking at videos, going back and forth about our top choices. Everyone that we reached out to for the role that we wanted them for, they were available. So it really worked out.
Mm. Kyle, how come you're never in these films? I think that's a conscious choice by you. Are you just moving behind the camera more now when you're not on a Netflix series, or what's? Why are you not in it?
I think I eventually, will be. I think the story obviously comes first, and so even if you're looking at the script and you think, well, what character, would I play? What am I like? What would I want to play? So it's easy to, if you're a producer on these things, if you're the investor, you can kind of just say like, I'm going to take this part, guys. And unless you're completely outvoted, we're not making The Godfather. So it's, casting, if it's in the ballpark, it'll work as an investor, but then it doesn't really serve the story very well. And there wasn't really any roles. I thought, speaking of like the one thing that I thought that I might've been interested in, Nathan actually played, which he'll tell you about. And he has like he is the line of the movie. He got the line for the title line. But yeah, I mean, eventually I think I'll move into wanting to be into these more. Like if we do a sequel, I'd like to be in it for sure.
So Nathan, that's kind of a setup for you. What was your line?
Am I allowed to say, guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's the title of the movie, so I guess it's okay.
It's the title of the movie.
Yeah, well, I'm an actor as well, but I was. Kyle had just asked me after I read the script, and he was just like, "Well, you'd be interested in playing one of these characters." I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And just giving my my type and everything, that there was really there was only about two roles I think that I could have had, and so I chose the detective role, which it's one scene. It's great. I love being even just getting the one scene was fantastic being in the film, but it's a pivotal role as far as I'm concerned. It kind of ties things up at the end. Yeah, just like Kyle. Well, there is a sequel. I hope that there's definitely a chance for my character to be expanded upon if the story is chosen in that direction. So
they didn't kill you in your scene.
Listen, I think I've given away as much as I can.
All right, cool. Yeah, I keep telling people if you guys do a film where you just like throw an axe into a podcaster's head, I'd volunteer. But
Nice.
Cool. Yeah.
I also.
Well, we won't.
Oh,
no, go ahead.
Sorry, Rob. I just want to give also a shout out to the guy who plays Popeye.
Yes.
He's how we got him. So Jason Stevens plays the role of Popeye, and if you look at his IMDb page, he actually looks like Popeye. Like he's just a big dude.
Yeah.
And I've known me and him been like best friends since like the 4th grade. So when we started talking about Popeye, my first thought was, and I mentioned this to Jeff and Kyle when we were first talking, I said, "Hey, what do you think of Jason? Because he looks like he looks like Popeye. We just got to put the big chin on him and we're done." And they were kind of on board. Jason was a cop for 30 years, and he retired a couple years before, and he was bored out of his mind. And so I called him up. Like once we all kind of agreed and everything came together, I called him and say, hey, we're doing this movie, Popeye. Would you be interested? He's like, yeah, absolutely. Because he was like, I'll do anything you need, man. Just tell me where to go and I'll do it. So
I thought he was like an MMA fighter or a wrestler or something. So he's a friend from high school. That's crazy.
Yeah. No, he's So
I was just saying, and that's what so much of it afforded us to be able to get the ball rolling, because you already had the Sailor Man like kind of in the bag from the start. So we were able to flesh out so much of the movie around him without having to spend a year to find the right person for that, which worked out really great. Not only was he a great performer, but he was so flexible and willing to jump in wherever was necessary.
We all worked very hard on the film, but in terms of who had the hardest time, it was him, because he was, like those latex gloves and stuff that he had to wear, and he was put through the ringer. He worked the most days of all the actors. I think of the 12, 13 days we were shot, he shot 10 days. And he was just always a lot of physical stuff that he had to do. And so he had a really tough time on set in terms of just the physicality. And he did a great job, never complained. And just as far as I could tell, he had a great time. And even now, when I just talked to him a few days ago, he's like, hey, we're doing promos. Let me know what you need me to do, and I'll show up, and I'll put I'll put the costume on and be Popeye, whatever you need. So yeah, he's been great.
So you guys did it in 13 days. That's pretty. That's a very tight. How many pages a day did you shoot?
Well, actually, our schedule was 12 days. So we shot 6 days on. We had a day off, and then we had 6 days on again. So 12 days. The script was, I think, almost 90 pages. So we were shooting about 8 to 10 pages a day.
That's pretty healthy.
But you also remember that almost every day we were shooting a kill scene, and those kill scenes can take anywhere from 1 to 3 hours to just set up, just to get one shot. When we were shooting at the factory, which is 9 days out of the 12, basically because it was a working factory, we didn't go in until about 5:30, 6 p.m. every night when the people who worked there left.
Yeah.
And then we shot until about 4 or 5 in the morning, when the employees literally started. We were literally mopping up blood off the floor while the lights were coming on. And employees were showing up for work at 5 a.m. And we're walking with
the HIPAA people show up. Wow, yeah, that's funny. I was going to say 8 to 10 pages. That's probably not heavy dialogue. It's a lot of like slash and kill and tension and description versus a lot of people talking. So that's
a lot of action. Yeah, a lot of action.
Those are even harder to shoot in that amount of pages per day.
And only 2 of those days were outside too. Everything was indoors. I should say outside during daytime. Everything else was night shoots. So
yeah.
11 days of or 10 days of your 12-day production being night shoots. It was dragging by the end. I know that's not 30 days or 40 days for a Hollywood production, but for a team who's covering a lot of the responsibilities and sharing them together, a lot of people were dragging by the end.
Yeah.
How long did it take for the edit? Yeah, it's always the toughest part. And by the way, an editor is another unsung hero you could probably have to thank too, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, so we finished the film in mid-May of 2024, and Otsego Media was going to has been handling the editing. Avery took over and did like a rough cut that was kind of our base that we started with, and then Corey Rowe, who owns Otsego Media, amazing, great guy, has been basically working on the edit since then.
They were our on-set DPs too, so that helped with the edit.
Yeah.
They shot the film.
Yeah, and because we had 2 cameras, we were shooting constantly. We had a lot of coverage, and so it took a long time for myself and Corey and everyone else to kind of go through the footage and say, "Oh, this is the shot. This is it," and start putting it together. And oh, this shot doesn't work. I think we have a better shot on camera B. Let's go through the files and see. I'm based in LA. Corey's based in Oneonta, New York. So everything's over email or Zoom calls. So it was a little slower than we wanted overall, but that's to be expected. But we're basically on schedule. Like, we finished the film, the edit was pretty much done, and like I said, we're literally just this week or this past week we've been finishing up the last of it to send to the lab for QC and send to our distributor.
The music is so recognizable and iconic for Popeye. Did you leverage that at all in the film? And was that also something that you had, public domain as well? Or how did that work for you guys?
We had to be actually pretty careful. We had, I think we talked to opinions of a few different lawyers, because funny enough, not everything Popeye is public domain. There's only certain characters, because certain characters were also introduced at a later time period. And Popeye's still trademarked. I'm a novice at understanding all this litigation talk, but from my understanding, like Popeye from the comics is the one that hits public domain, but it's not all things Popeye, meaning not all characters, not the music. Going back to like what some people would say in comment sections on YouTube videos type thing, would be like, oh, I hope we get to see or hear Popeye's like gah, 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 gah noise. But it's like we had to steer away from that strictly for legal purposes. So there's a lot of things that people are going to hope to see, like Bluto. He's not in the film. So there's like certain things that we just couldn't touch because it's not public domain. Yeah.
Once you're done, what was it like? Did you want to go to film festivals, or like, no, we're going right to a distributor. We're gonna get this sold. What was that process like?
I think our plan from the beginning was to find a distributor, and we had a couple that we'd worked with in the past that we were kind of hoping to work with. We actually got lucky that we had VMI reach out to us. They were very interested. Jeff went to AFM in Vegas in November of 2024 and met, we had the trailer done. We had the movie pretty much done at that point, and he was able to show it to some people that he knew and that we had worked with in the past and some other people, and VMI was there and saw it and really liked it. And they approached us with a really strong offer that we were very happy with, and we're excited to go with them. We're thinking about maybe doing like some screenings, film festivals and stuff down the line. But in terms of trying to get this out to as many people as possible, our distribution plan, I think, is going to be the most solid for that.
Is this setting the bar higher for your budget going forward for your next film and other films?
You mean like specific to Popeye, or just any film we do next?
Well, now that you've done Popeye, and say it does really well, because look, it's a very popular figure. Even if it's controversial, it's going to help you guys out. People are going to watch it no matter what.
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to raise the bar a little bit more for what you do going forward?
I think there's always potential for that. You always want to obviously spend the least amount of money as you can to, just for, because you don't want to go into severe debt and stay that way for these things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you always have to balance like spending too little and what you sacrifice and not spending enough. So yeah, this certainly has potential to be like a certain windfall for a future Popeye film. I would imagine naturally, if that were to happen, we'd spend a little bit more going into a sequel. But if it's not a Popeye film that we do next, I don't think it necessarily sets any kind of bar because it's all depends on the context of the script, because some ideas that we have are simpler, and it wouldn't make sense to even spend maybe half or 75% of what we just spent on Popeye. So it's going to be, there's no clear answer, but there's certainly potential, like if this does well, because that's the same thing with a lot of these public domain films, or any of these indie horror, anyone that tends to get sequels, they go bigger. So I would imagine we'd align with that as well.
So I'm going to throw out, coming up, a couple other characters are about to enter the public domain. Then I'm going to go round robin and ask you guys which would be your favorite to do, if that's okay. All right. So Popeye's 2025. 2026 is Betty Boop and Pluto. 2028 is Goofy. 2029 is Donald Duck and King Kong. 2032 is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. 2034, Superman. 2035 is one I would love to do is Bugs Bunny and Batman. And then 2036, Captain America, the Joker. 2037, Wonder Woman. And then Mickey Mouse, the modern version, 15 years from now, comes into the public domain. Any of those? I mean, I'm thinking Pluto, Cujo. I'm thinking, Bugs Bunny would be a very cool one. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Let's start with Tucker first. What do you think?
Did you say Donald Duck? Did I hear you say Donald Duck?
Yeah, Donald Duck in 2029.
Big fan of Donald Duck. I would love to remake Howard the Duck, but as an actual Donald Duck, but do it exactly the same from the 80s and see how that does in the modern day. I love Donald Duck. I don't know what you do with it and what the take would be, but I feel like it would be a lot of fun to do something with that.
Well, you got some time. Nathan, what do you think?
I would probably I like Donald Duck as well, but also Pluto. I mean, why not just have them team up together and do something, as a duo? That seems like that'd be a lot of fun there. They just ride in together and just terrorize towns. I don't know.
Yes.
I'd have to think about that one.
There's a whole thing on the Disney Underground, the underground beneath Disney you could do with that, couldn't you?
Yeah.
All right. Robert, what do you think?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't thought enough about it, to be honest. Nothing of what you said really jumped out at me and kind of excited me the way Popeye did when we first kind of came up with that. Personally, I look at Popeye as a great franchise possibility, and I'd like for the next few years to be doing a new Popeye movie every year or two. So maybe it's one of those things where we could have a Popeye 4. We'll have a character like Betty Boop come in and be like,
right.
A femme fatale or something that can come in, and then we can have some fun with it that way, and incorporating it into like our, kind of our own kind of Popeye universe thing.
All right, I want to be invited to your next kitchen session. Kyle, what about you?
I'm honestly not a huge fan of these IPs being turned into horror flicks. That said, Popeye, I think, was a natural fit, which is why I think we were excited about it, because it feels like Popeye is already like a violent character. Even in the cartoons, like he beats up bullies. He has like a rough personality. He's like a very blue collar guy. So I think it just naturally aligns with this idea that, Popeye would be an amazing dude to just go around and wreak havoc. But you also said Superman. I don't think I'd ever be interested in making or being a part of another film outside of Popeye. I think this is like my one IP that I'm ever interested in. But Superman, somebody like him who's, godlike powers, if he were to be on the force of evil and somebody makes like a horror film with what Superman's capable of, like that could be pretty interesting. I'd like to see that probably.
Now, we're getting near the end. I think one of you guys, was it Nathan or was it Tucker that had a couple ghost stories? Which one was it?
Nathan over there.
Oh, that was me, Nathan.
Nathan, bring it on.
Yeah.
Anytime I wear my Afraid of Nothing hoodie, and Kyle, you got yours. Hopefully you got it anyways.
I wear it to bed every night.
I love it. Anytime I go out and I wear that, or I always meet people that have a ghost story, and it's crazy, and they're not quite sure it's a ghost story. The more they tell me, the more they convince themselves. So, Nathan, tell us about some of your experiences.
Well, yeah, I've actually had a couple, but what was interesting, I used to work at one of the oldest hotels in Louisville, Kentucky, where I'm from, called the Seelbach Hotel. And I think one of the cable channels, I don't know if it was History or 80, one of these that did the 10 most haunted hotels in America in the Seelbach.
Travel Channel. Yeah, Travel Channel does that, even though it's not the Travel Channel, but you're right. Yeah.
And so I worked, when I was younger, in my early 20s, I worked as a third shift bellman. And I worked on my own at that shift, so 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And, I'd heard some stories. There was the story of a woman that threw herself down the elevator shaft back in the 20s or 30s on her wedding day, because I think her husband was killed in a car wreck, or, the guy she was going to get married to on the way to the wedding. And anyway, so there was a lot of stories around that and some other episodes that happened. But really the one that stuck out to me, there was two really profound ones. One, this lady that was coming in, she'd come in like every other week for about 3 or 4 days for business. She'd been coming for a couple of years, a very, very nice lady, professional lady. And she comes down in the middle of the night one night to my bell desk, and she was just frightened. She was in her pajamas, whatever. I mean, she just got up and came down to me, and she said, "So I'm going to need you to go to my room and get my stuff, and you're going to have to give me a new room."
Oh, God.
And I was like, I could tell she was rattled. I was like, what happened? What's going on? She said, "So I was in bed and I was getting ready to fall asleep, and somebody just got into bed with me." Just slipped right under the covers, and she's like, and I jumped up, and obviously it turned on the light. There's nobody there, but there was somebody that slipped into bed with me, and you're going to give me another room. So that incident happened. And then the second one that I had experienced personally there was, so a guest had called down to the front desk, said, "Hey, people next to me, they're playing really loud music. They're playing 20s style music, and it's really loud, and I can't sleep." So they asked me to go up, and I go up there, and I'm like, I could hear the music going on in this room. So I because they didn't know which room it was coming from. So they asked me to go up, and I could hear the music playing. So I knocked on the door. They didn't answer. So I radioed down to the front desk, and I said, hey, it's, room 409 or whatever. Can you call them? And she looked, and she said, there's nobody staying in 409. Ugh. And I was like, so I got out of there, and the music ended up stopping. The guest finally said, it had stopped, but there was nobody in that room. So those are my two experiences in that place. And then there was another place in Louisville that you may have heard of, the Waverly Sanatorium.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, we used to go there a lot because I was in the area as well. And we did a private tour where you could just a group of you could just go. And the owners that had it at the time, you just paid them like $50 each, and you could just explore the whole sanatorium, whenever you want, however you wanted to go.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that you'd hear is like coughing coming up and down the halls constantly. And there wasn't like very many people there at the time we were there. So, I didn't believe they were putting us on or anything like that, because I heard this door shut down the hallway, and I ran down there to see what it was. And the door was propped open, and it didn't look like it had been shut in 30 years. It was just like cobwebbed and rusted. And I'm like, what is going on? And I talked to one of the guys that was kind of the groundskeeper, and he goes, yeah, those are the two most common things. You hear a lot of deep coughing and doors slamming. And he's like, that's like what pretty much everybody experiences here. So,
wow. Yeah. Kyle, once in a while, sets us up with people with ghost stories. What was that rock band? 220 or 320 or Kyle?
I think 3 and 20 is that their name?
Yeah. Yeah. Where they had as a band, they had an experience at an inn where they stayed, and he had an experience in his, where he was living. And so, yeah, those are crazy. Almost everybody has a ghost story. I keep running into that. I just came back from a sales kickoff meeting for work last week in Pittsburgh, and there was a flight from Boston going down where a half a dozen of us were on it. And as we got off, one of the senior guys came to me and said, I hear you do a podcast. I got to tell you this story. I forget where it was. I think it was in Concord, but he was at this hotel, and he literally got attacked. This is a guy who never had an experience in his life. He never believed in anything. He literally got attacked in the middle of the night, and when he looked in, he had like 3 marks on his head, like blood-stained marks on his head, and he was freaked out by it, and it was like, I don't know what the hell that was. And my wife didn't believe me until I showed her the marks on my head, and it's just, it just totally took me out. He had never had an experience, and it totally changed his perspective, so there's a lot of stuff going on out there. I mean, I can ask anybody else if you've had one, but Kyle, I know you've had stuff where you're not quite sure. So,
yeah, there's definitely been a few experiences, but we've talked about so many times where, while I am certainly a believer in things paranormal without really understanding what it could be, I'm open to a lot of different possibilities. One of them being that it is something just naturally occurring. So it's like, yeah, I've had experiences, but I also can't say definitively that it was caused by what might be considered a ghost. Or I don't know if we did talk about the latest one, which was right around, I think it was the year before Popeye, where I was at my mother's house, and she actually lives in my aunt who had passed on, and my mom lives in her old house. The bedroom's at the opposite sides of the house. And Pippin, my dog, he always sleeps with me. He goes under the covers. That's just like the routine. And this was, who knows what time it was, but I had felt Popeye and Pippin. I got the P's mixed up. So at a certain point during the night, Pippin, because he goes under the covers and goes either behind, like snuggles next to my legs or between my legs. And that's his thing. But at some point, I don't know how he does it. I feel like he's going to suffocate, but at some point he just gets really hot or whatever, but he comes out from under the blankets and then goes on top of them. So I had felt that experience happening. It's just, it kind of wakes you up, but you fall asleep right away. So I felt that happening, and I had felt him go on top of down near my feet. And I felt just him curling up, doing the circles that dogs like to do to make themselves comfortable. So I felt that happening and went back to bed. But at the same time, I realized that wasn't Pippin, because Pippin was still in between my legs. And as soon as I was having that thought, the blankets tightened around me. I don't know how to really describe it.
Oh, God.
It was as if somebody was like literally tucking the blankets like with their hands underneath specifically my shoulders. Like they were like, putting, like tightening, like mummifying me. And it was very obvious that, and I was like, oh my God, this is like a real thing. This is really happening. And as soon as that started to, it wasn't hurting. It wasn't like a mega amount of pressure, but it was very obvious that that I wasn't like dreaming, that this was actually happening. And I screamed.
Wow.
I can't say what I said online, but I screamed vulgarities at this thing, and I said, "Leave me alone," and it immediately stopped. And that's like that's what I would say would be my most personal experience, which I don't necessarily, I can't explain that away, but I also can't say like 100%. Was I imagining that?
Yeah.
I have to say like there's possibility that I was imagining that, but I also know that I wasn't, So I don't know. And I told my mom, she's like, well, that wasn't your Aunt Sandy. I was like, no, I didn't mean it was, my Aunt Sandy wasn't trying to kill me. I understand that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the most powerful evidence I personally have of all that stuff for sure.
Yeah, unless it's a straight on apparition, it's hard. I mean, I'll close with this. I would like you guys, your next movie, to do it with all these orbs and drone stuff. I'd love you to do a UFO movie for your next one. I mean, Kyle and I have done a lot of interviews with people on that, and Kyle could be a great scriptwriter for that, I think, based on his experience on who we talked to. So keep that in mind if you don't mind. Do a UFO one. That'd be kind of
big fan of that. I'm all down for that too.
Yeah. Be awesome, especially New York, Hudson Valley, upstate New York. There's a lot of stuff on.
The cool thing with like, paranormal stories is, Bob, you've heard this so much. It's like there are a lot of people that have experiences, but they're, maybe it's a certain profession or their personal circles, their friends, their relatives that are afraid to talk about it because of how it's perceived. That the guy in the plane, when he hears that you have a podcast about this stuff, he's probably wanted, like, you said he talked to his wife. She's not going to believe him. He probably, and that, the guy from the band, the 3 and 20 band, same thing. When he told me that story, he only opened up to me because we talked about earlier in the night was about ghosts, but he's been wanting to tell the story, but he said he doesn't have the support in his personal life that he feels comfortable telling anybody about this stuff because it's just, they're seen as senile.
He loved being on the podcast, though, Kyle. Remember how thankful he was?
Yeah. And his story was incredible. And when he first told me, like, I love when people tell me stories that happened to them, because most of the time it's like, oh, my Uncle Dave's fourth cousin had this experience. And it's like, it's so far removed down the chain. I only can, take so much of that. But when you hear it from someone that you know and you trust and they have an experience, it adds a lot of credibility to the story. And I love hearing when people have experiences firsthand.
So, yeah, I guess we'll end here, but what's next for you guys? Let's go around the horn real quick. Is there anything else we should look from you guys? Because you're getting better and better in the movies that you do. You've touched a Ouija, you've touched dolls, you've Popeye. Is there anything you'd love to do next? So let's go around. Let's start with Robert, and then we'll go to the rest of the guys.
Well, we do have one or two other scripts that we're really kind of interested in, but I hate to start talking about them now because it feels a little premature. But I know that definitely.
Well, it's good to know, though. Yeah.
Yeah. But I definitely love the idea of doing another Popeye movie sooner than later. In fact, Kyle and I were just talking about this recently about how, we've got a couple of ideas that we're kicking around for what the sequel would be. And we got to sit down and start having a serious conversation about that because, there's definitely going to be a follow-up to this movie, I hope.
That's great. Alex, what about you? Were you kind of interested in a UFO, or what would you like to do for your next film?
Oh, I love the blending of horror and sci-fi to those classic genres and bringing them together in a way. I do love UFOs and aliens. I'd certainly be open to that. Kyle and I, we have been batting around more ideas for the future. Truly, we're just excited to keep doing it and scaling up, not necessarily in the scale of size of the pictures, but in quality and the craftsmanship of the filmmaking and creativity. Really continuing to push these things as filmmakers ourselves, and continuing to expand not just our reach, but our network of doing that. So open to continuing to produce great stories and working with great people moving forward. But for now, we're just excited about this project and taking this project to the next level.
Yeah, enjoy the present. You're right.
Not just the next one, but enjoying what this has. Like we haven't even released this movie, and I know that the reach that this has made and felt for people out there has been vast and unexpected. Certainly something that we hope for, but it's just really cool seeing the response that people have had. So we're excited to take it to the next level. So as a shout out to anybody who, as this comes, we're hoping for it to hit theaters. But if anybody is interested in taking it to theaters, you are either a distributor or know people, hit us up. We'd love to take it to your town and to a theater near you.
Can you pre-order this Popeye the Slayer Man yet, or is that a couple months away?
That's still going to be a few months away, yeah.
Okay. Nathan, what about you? What would you like to do next? Is anything on your radar?
Well, I'll tell you that doing an alien movie would be fantastic. That's something that...
God, I would love if you guys did that.
I nerd out when it comes to alien stuff. I can't get enough of it. I get everything from the Anunnaki to, modern day orbs that is happening. I mean, I'm just... talk with people about getting implants, or abductions. I'm certainly a nerd for all of that, man. So I think that would be really great to take something like that on forward. But I didn't produce, but I was an actor in a film that we just wrapped last month. That actually Jeff Miller, who wasn't able to make on the call today as a producer, he produced a movie called The Caretaker, and I got on as an actor and worked with Daniel Baldwin.
Wow, cool!
6 scenes or so with. Great. Just one day we worked together, and so that'll be out later this year, called The Caretaker. So anyway, had that wrapped up, and potentially might be shooting a Western with a buddy I've worked with a few times later in August. So we're still in pre-production on that, but that's promising to work on. But like these guys, I'm really excited about Popeye coming out and focusing on that right now, and hopefully it does well enough, and we can make a series out of it. So we'll see what happens.
I look forward to it. You know what I saw recently that really held up well? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. With all this orb stuff and the orbs and the drones, believe it or not, that's in that movie. I don't know if you've seen it for a while, but that held up really well. So, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time tonight, and I really look forward to seeing Popeye the Slayer Man. I'm intrigued by it, and I wish you just mega success with this and your next Alien movie, all right, and your future Popeye movies. Thank you, everyone.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared. Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.